Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Carestream Molecular Imaging's presentation, Tips and Techniques, the In-Vivo MS FX PRO for the beginning user. Due to the number of people here today, we have muted all attendees. If you have any questions during the program, please type them into the question box to your right. At the end of the presentation, we'll have a brief Q&A session, and we'll try to answer as many questions as possible during this time. If we're unable to answer your questions, we'll contact you with an answer directly. I am now pleased to introduce you to today's speaker, Dr. Todd Sasser, Training Manager here at Carestream Molecular Imaging.
Okay, thanks Meryl, and welcome everyone to Tips and Techniques, the In-Vivo Multispectral FX PRO for the beginning user. I'm Todd Sasser. I'm a Training and Application Scientist with Carestream Molecular Imaging. The intention of today's session is to provide beginning In-Vivo Multispectral FX PRO end users with an introduction to the system, software, and supporting materials. Today's session is divided into two parts. Part one is an introduction to the system and settings as well as supporting materials. Part two is a quick video session providing an introduction to some basic procedures that the general user will want to be familiar with. These procedures are basic acquisitions, emission filter, and phosphor screen exchanges. Part one, hardware, software, accessories, and supporting materials. First, the In-Vivo Multispectral FX PRO nomenclature. MS stands for multispectral, which refers to the advanced multispectral fluorescence imaging capability of the system. F stands for fluorescence, X for X-ray, and PRO refers to the system automation. The In-Vivo Multispectral FX PRO system is a 4-in-1 detection platform. This allows for multispectral fluorescence detection. An example of this is shown in the top left, where two fluorophores, Alexa 680 and Alexa 700, with overlapping spectrum are neatly imaged. Radioisotopic detection. An example of this is shown in the top right, looking at FDG activity localized to an animal's heart. Luminescence detection and X-ray imaging can be utilized by itself in bone studies or combined with functional modalities for anatomical reference. This is shown in each of the images here, where fluorescent, radioisotopic, and luminescent images are registered with an X-ray image. The applications for the system include both in vivo and in vitro imaging. Examples of the in vivo applications include detection of cellular or molecular markers. Some examples of commercially available markers include Q-Tracker and MMP-Sense. Q-Tracker has been used for fluorescently labeling cells for subsequent in vivo imaging. MMP-Sense has been employed for in vivo detection of matrix metalloproteinase activity, which has been employed as a pretty broad-acting tumor labeling agent. X-ray imaging can be employed to visualize skeletal features, and with the use of contrast agents like Visopaque or barium sulfate, other tissues such as vasculature and GI tract can be visualized via X-ray imaging. In vitro imaging, including imaging of chemiluminescent blots and fluorescent gels, is also possible. Cell culture may be also imaged. In fact, we recommend that prior to attempting an experiment in vivo, the labeling and signal be verified in vitro first. Imaging pelleted cells is an easy way to do this. The system operates on an inverted illumination and detection platform. The sample resides in a sample tray where both thermal control and anesthesia may be ported. Illumination is via a xenon excitation source with a 29-position filter wheel. Detection is made at a right inverted angle and via a cooled CCD detector. The detection path includes a 4-position emission wheel. Again, the In-Vivo Multispectral FX PRO is configured with a 29-position filter wheel and 28 excitation filters ranging from 410 nanometers to 760 nanometers. Each filter has a 10 nanometer plus-minus bandpass. The system is configured with a 4-position emission wheel with 3 positions available for loading and a total of 6 filters to select for installation. The emission filters have a 17.5 plus-minus nanometer bandpass. When selecting filters, it is important to consider the bandpass of excitation and emission filters to ensure that they do not overlap. For multispectral detections, multiple acquisitions are performed with multiple excitation filters. In this simplified example, we are showing green, yellow, and red excitation. The images are compiled for unmixing, allowing for detection of multiple fluorophores with overlapping spectrums. Multispectral imaging can also be employed to allow for subtraction of autofluorescence. For luminescence detection, the sample chamber is a light-tight environment. The imaging window, also referred to as the platen, and the user guides and software controls is open, and detection occurs again at a right angle via CCD detector, and typically with no emission filter in place. For radioisotopic detection, the radioisotopic screen slides between the sample and the detector. Gamma rays strike the phosphor screen, which is excited and subsequently emits photons, which are detected by the CCD. For X-ray detection, X-ray is applied overhead. The radiographic screen, which is a different screen than the radioisotopic screen, slides between the sample and the detector, converting the X-ray energy into photons. The In-Vivo Multispectral FX PRO may also be complemented by the use of several optional accessory items. These items include a gas anesthesia setup, the Multimodal Animal Rotation System, or MARS for short, the Geometric Magnification Stage, and the bone density software. The gas anesthesia setup consists of a regulator, a vaporizer, an induction box, a 5-nose cone manifold, charcoal scavengers, and accompanying tubing. The Multimodal Animal Rotation System, or MARS, sits over the platen. The system allows for discrete multiple angles of detection. Here we have an output of a MARS acquisition for X-ray and fluorescence. Dye 1 resides in the liver, while dye 2 resides in the kidneys. You can see that the detection level for the dyes varies depending on the anatomical location of the signal and the angle of detection. The MARS unit effectively allows for optimized angle of detection, which is particularly valuable when one doesn't know for sure where the signal will originate. The MARS also allows for unique display that provides an appreciation of dimension and localization. The bone density software allows for analysis of the X-ray images from an FX system and quantification of absolute calcium phosphate concentrations in long bones. The software uses a bone cylinder model, so samples should be analyzed using a rectangular region of interest perpendicular to the long bones. The bone density software allows for cross comparisons in longitudinal or control data sets. The bone density software operates as a plug-in into the manual ROI tool of the molecular imaging software. The typical data output is shown here to the right. Several statistics are provided, but most users are interested in this bone density value, grams per cubic centimeter. The geometric magnification stage resides in the ceiling of the X-ray cabinet, directly adjacent to the X-ray source. A 3.35x magnification is achieved with X-ray when the sample is positioned in the mag stage. This stage is useful when looking for fine anatomical detail. The In-Vivo Multispectral FX PRO is operated via the Carestream molecular imaging software. All acquisitions, including multispectral fluorescent acquisitions, are performed here. The MI analysis has multiple integrated analysis features for both in vivo and in vitro applications. The navigation panel in the software allows for contrasting, unit conversions, overlays, auto lane and band finding, ROI or region of interest analysis, databasing, and annotation. The next several slides will consider capture setting controls and output with varied capture settings. The system is fully motorized, and capture settings can be saved for automated recall. The capture setting controls are divided into 5 blocks. The top block is the setting block. Setting names are entered here for recall. The exposure time and bend level are set in the exposure block. The illumination type, reference, and associated values are set in the illumination block. The lens and filter settings are set in the set camera 2 block. The lens settings, f-stop, field of view, and focal plane are set here. Once individual capture settings are created, the system can be programmed via the Create Edit Protocol menu to automatically run defined capture settings in sequence. For example, X-ray, fluorescence, and luminescence acquisitions can be run sequentially to facilitate throughput and minimize manipulations. We'll next look at the relationship between capture settings and resulting image properties. In this example, a single mouse with signal located in the hind limb is imaged at 2 seconds, 10 seconds, and 30 seconds, and all other parameters are held constant. You can see here that the signal-to-noise ratio of the hind limb signal is roughly linear to the exposure time employed. The capture setting includes the option to change the bin setting. The graphic to the right represents a CCD chip, which is a sensor employed for all in vivo multispectral FX Pro acquisitions. A CCD chip is a grid of electron wells. When a photon strikes a well, it is converted into an electron and is held in the well through the acquisition. We can think of each electron well as a pixel in an image. If I perform a bend capture, then I will pull adjacent counts. For example, if I set a 2x2, then the acquisition will be 2x2, 4 times faster than a non-bend image, but 1/4 the resolution. This formula carries through other bend settings. With a 4x4 bend setting, the acquisition will be 16 times faster, or 4 times 4, 16, but 1/16 the resolution. This is the same animal shown before, imaged this time, using different bend settings and holding all other parameters constant. You can see that higher bend settings allow for greater apparent signal detection. The system field of view or zoom setting is set in millimeter units. The user can program the zoom setting according to the desired imaging area. For example, to image a full 5 mice, a field of view of 200 millimeters by 200 millimeters should be selected. To image 3 mice, a 160 by 160 millimeter field of view setting should be selected. To image a single mouse, a 80 millimeter by 80 millimeter field of view should be selected. The f-stop setting controls the opening on the lens. The f-stop control in the software reads at the extreme ends O for open and C for closed. The figure here shows the lens aperture at open, partially closed, and mostly closed settings. The more open the aperture, the more light the system will detect. This also sets a narrow plane of focus. The more closed the aperture, the less light the system will detect. This sets a broader focal plane, which is sometimes desirable because it can provide a crisp image quality. Again, the same sample shown before, this time imaged with different f-stop settings. To the left, the f-stop is set to mostly open. As the f-stop is closed, the light detection decreases. As a general rule of thumb, the acquisition time required will change 2x for every 1x unit change in the f-stop setting. The system is equipped with an aluminum filter wheel positioned directly in the path of the X-ray source. When a thicker aluminum filter is employed, only the harder X-ray energy will be applied to the sample. You can see here that to the left, with no aluminum filter, we obtain contrast for soft tissues. As we move to the right, with thicker filters, we get increased hard tissue contrast. The Carestream MI software is employed for driving both multispectral and Mars acquisitions. There are 2 secondary software programs, Carestream Multispectral and Carestream Rotation, for processing imaging sets for multispectral and Mars acquisitions. Some of the print materials that accompany your system include the In-Vivo FX PRO user guide, which details the hardware, acquisition parameters, etc. The In-Vivo Multispectral Software User Guide addresses aspects of the system related to multispectral fluorescence. The Mars User Guide provides details of the Mars operation. The Carestream Molecular Imaging Software User Guide provides details of the MI analysis and image processing capabilities. The product insert for the anesthesia system provides a description of the system with images. The bone density product insert provides a description of the software and instructions for using the software. The In-Vivo imaging tutorial provides instructions for performing sequences of X-ray and fluorescent acquisitions, including multispectral fluorescence, that allows a user to become familiar with the system controls. An accompanying CMI mouse target card with a copper inlay skeleton for X-ray contrast and fluorescent organs is provided for use with the tutorial. There's also a repository of previously recorded webinars available at the website covering a wide range of topics. Application notes are also available at the website. We also conduct quarterly end-user workshops. Please contact me for details related to end-user workshops and schedules. Next, part 2, basic procedures. For the remainder of the session, we'll show a few basic procedures. First, we'll show the process for setting capture settings and protocols. This information will be useful to the general user. We will also show procedures for exchanging filters and screens. We will use the CMI mouse target that is provided with the In-Vivo imaging tutorial to demonstrate the process for programming X-ray and fluorescent acquisition protocols. We have launched the capture setting menu from the Capture In-Vivo FX button. We need to first generate a capture setting for the individual modalities to be included within a protocol. In this case, we'll generate an X-ray setting first. We'll generate a capture setting named for recall. We'll set the illumination type, in this case X-ray. We'll next select the illuminant filter to be used. We'll then set the exposure time. We'll then set the camera settings. An f-stop of 2.8, an FOV of 55 millimeters, since our target card is approximately 55 millimeters wide, and the focal plane has defaulted to X-ray because we've selected the X-ray setting. Generally, we will want to set an illumination reference for a given FOV and illuminant filter if this has not already been done. To do this, we will want to select current session, and the settings pull-down menu. We will select illumination reference in the exposure block, and finally we'll select expose. Because we have selected the illumination reference option, the file will automatically be added to a database of reference files that can be permanently associated with a given capture setting. We will tie the reference file to the capture setting by selecting Auto Select in the Apply Reference File pull-down menu. Next, we'll generate a complementary fluorescent acquisition. We'll call this capture setting CMI Mouse 535 because we'll be utilizing a 535 nanometer emission filter, and this name will remind us of the capture setting use. We'll set a 0.2 second exposure time with no bending. We will select multi-wavelength as an illumination source from the pull-down. We'll change the focal plane setting to tray. Finally, we'll select the excitation and emission filter settings based on the known excitation and emission properties of our fluorophores. In this case, a 480 excitation and 535 nanometer emission. We may also want to generate an illumination reference file for the multi-wavelength capture. The epi-fill flattening screen will be positioned over the platen to act as a collection screen for the light distribution. We select current session. As before, an illumination reference. And then we select illumination reference from the pull-down. And then we'll select expose. Again, because we've selected illumination, this is added to a database. Return to our capture setting. And from the apply reference file, we will select auto select. Finally, we'll position the CMI mouse target card in the central field of view, for which we've created a X-ray and fluorescent acquisition. And we'll streamline the process by creating a protocol. So we'll create a protocol for automated X-ray and then fluorescence detection for this and subsequent acquisitions, assuming that you'll be using multimodal acquisitions multiple times. Generate a protocol name, CMI mouse, and 535, again for recall purposes. There's a default path for files to be saved. We can change this. We can set multiple steps to a protocol. The capture setting pull-down has all program capture settings. Here we select our X-ray capture setting and open an MI. And then we'll add the 535 fluorescent capture setting as step 2. And we could execute the protocol from here, but we'll return to the main capture setting menu just to show that there is a pull down available, and we'll execute the acquisition from this control. We have a protocol status display shown next. First, step 1, our X-ray acquisition completes, opens up automatically in the background. The system is acquiring step 2 according to the protocol. And we'll show a simple method finally for displaying multimodal registration using the available image display tool. We'll be stamping the fluorescent image on the X-ray image. We want to contrast the fluorescent image such that the background is black. Contrast the X-ray image to your preference. And then next, maximize the image display tool. You can see here that the transparency checkbox has been selected. When we select the transparency checkbox, the black elements will be shown as transparent. Highly recommend that you complete the in vivo tutorial. And next, we'll show the manual exchange of the emission filters. Again, the system is equipped with a 4-position filter wheel, and 3 filters may be installed. 3 filter selections typically cover the range of fluorescence that one would work with. So to access the emission filter exchange menu, select the emission filter edit button, select load next to the filter you wish to load, in this case 700. Next, we'll access the emission filter wheel via the filter access panel. We'll want to remove the thumb screws that hold the panel in place. And we'll remove the filter by positioning the filter access panel pins into the corresponding pinholes on the filter. And we'll show a closer look of exactly where that contact for the pins is. And then finally, we'll insert a replacement filter, in this case a 790 filter. And return the thumb screws. And we return to the software and update the filter value to reflect the newly installed filter. Separate phosphorus screens are required for X-ray versus radioisotopic detection. The radiographic screen used for X-ray is a thinner screen that provides higher resolution for X-ray imaging. The radioisotopic screen is a thicker screen and provides greater sensitivity for radioisotopic imaging. The exchange for these screens is fairly simple. Remove one screen by pulling straight up from the positioning pins. And then install the exchange screen by positioning it on the available pins. A complete description of multispectral fluorescence acquisitions is really beyond the scope of this webinar. I recommend referencing a few existing resources for details regarding multispectral fluorescence acquisitions. Number 1, reference the In Vivo Multispectral Software User Guide. Number 2, complete the In Vivo imaging tutorial provided with your system, which includes sections that allow you to practice the process of a multispectral acquisition and subsequent imaging. And finally, you have the option of viewing the webinar available at YouTube and at our website utilizing the multispectral features of a Carestream molecular imaging In Vivo Multispectral FX PRO system. The Mars system is also really beyond the scope of an initial introduction to the system. There are a couple of great webinars on the Mars unit. There's also an accompanying Mars unit user guide, and we recommend that you start out looking at the example protocol on page 2.1 and 2.2 of the Mars software user guide. Okay, well, thank you for attending today's webinar, and at this point, if there are any questions, I could take those, or feel free to email me at any time at todd.sasser@carestream.com. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Todd. Again, if you have any questions, please type them into your box on the side. We had one question come in. How do X-ray scintillation studies? How to do X-ray scintillation studies?
I'm not familiar with X-ray scintillation studies, unfortunately, so I'd have to get back to the person about the X-ray scintillation studies for the system. It's not something that I have had any of our end users attempt to perform, unfortunately.
Okay. What is the optimum exposure time for radioisotope imaging?
It's the same as fluorescence and luminescence detection. It really depends on the intensity level and the signal intensity of your sample, but I would typically, depending on the isotope, do a higher bend setting and start out imaging at 4 minutes. You can always work backwards from that, but a starting protocol that I would recommend would be about 4 minutes and an 8x8 bend setting. And from there, you can gauge the intensity level to determine the exposure time. It will vary as well depending on the isotope that you're using. The screen is more sensitive for the lower energy isotopes, Tech-99, for example. For higher energy isotopes, you'll have a lower overall sensitivity for detection.
Okay. Can we do 3D imaging?
You can do Mars rotation imaging, so it's not true tomographic imaging at this time.
All right. That looks like it's most of today's questions. Anything else? Please feel free to contact us directly or contact Todd. This webinar has been recorded, and I will be sending you a link to it before the end of the week. As Todd mentioned, all our webinars are available both on our website as well as our YouTube channel, which is Carestream MI. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a wonderful week.